Will sat in his power chair near the window, his AAC tablet resting on the mount in front of him. The house felt too quiet, like everyone was trying not to breathe too loudly. Todd stood by the kitchen counter with his phone in his hand. He had already made all the calls. He had already talked to Grandpa Rod, Uncle Matt, and Ben. Everyone knew what tomorrow was. Linda's funeral. Will stared at the floor for a long time before he slowly lifted his hand and typed. Can I stay with Ben while you guys go to Linda's funeral? I don't want to go. Todd looked at the words, then looked at his son. His face softened right away. I already called Ben, Todd said gently. He said it's fine, he wants you there with him. Will swallowed hard, his hand shook as he typed again. Alive or dead, I can't be in the same room as that woman after everything. Todd walked over and crouched in front of Will's chair so Will did not have to look up at him. We get it, Todd said. Grandpa Rod gets it, Uncle Matt gets it, your mom gets it, Henry gets it. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone. Will blinked fast, trying not to cry, but his eyes were already wet. Todd placed a hand on Will's arm. You are not being disrespectful, Todd said. You are protecting yourself, there's a difference. Will typed slower this time. I feel bad because she dead. Todd shook his head. You can feel bad that someone died and still remember what they did to you, he said. Both things can be true. Will looked toward the hallway where Bate was packing a small bag for him. Extra clothes, diapers, wipes, charger for his tablet, medicine, everything Ben would need. Bate came into the room and held up the bag. I packed your stuff, she said. Ben said he'll keep your chair charger plugged in and he already moved the table so you can get through his living room easier. Will let out a small breath. He don't mind. Bate walked over and kissed his forehead. He loves you, she said, he doesn't mind. Todd stood and rubbed the back of his neck. Grandpa Rod asked if you wanted him to come see you before the funeral, Todd said. I told him only if you say yes. Will stared at the screen for a moment. Not before, maybe after. Todd nodded. That's fair. Henry walked in from the hallway trying to look normal, but his red eyes gave him away. He leaned against the wall. So you're really not going? Henry asked softly. Will typed. No. Henry nodded fast. Good, he said. I mean, not good that any of this happened, but good that you don't have to sit there and pretend. Will looked at his little brother. You mad? Henry frowned. Why would I be mad? Because everyone has to go but me. Henry walked closer. Will, I don't want to go either, Henry said, but I'm going for Dad and Mom, not for Linda. Todd looked down. Bate was quiet. Will typed. I'm sorry she was your grandma too. Henry's face twisted a little, like he was trying hard not to cry. She ruined that herself, Henry said, not you. For a second nobody spoke. Then Todd cleared his throat. Ben said we can bring you over after breakfast. The funeral is at noon, we'll pick you up after everything is done unless you want to stay longer. Will typed. Can I stay until bedtime? Todd looked at Bate, Bate nodded. Yeah, Todd said, you can stay until bedtime. Will's shoulders loosened a little. Bate came closer and fixed the blanket over his legs. You don't have to be strong tomorrow, she said, you just have to be safe. Will stared at her then typed. I hate that even dead she still makes me scared. Todd's jaw tightened but his voice stayed calm. I know, he said, and I hate that too. Will's fingers hovered over the tablet, then he typed one more thing. Dad, if people ask why I'm not there, don't lie. Todd nodded. I won't. Tell them I couldn't go because Linda hurt me. Todd's eyes filled with tears. I'll tell the truth, he said. Henry looked at Will. And if anyone has a problem with it, they can deal with me. Will gave him a look. You are 12. Henry shrugged. Still. For the first time that night, Will almost smiled. Todd noticed and smiled back a little. There he is, Todd said quietly. Will looked down at his tablet. A little. Bate kissed the top of his head again. A little is enough for tonight, she said. The next morning the house moved slowly. No one played music, no one joked too loudly. Todd helped Will get washed and changed, making sure everything was packed twice. Bate checked the bag again even though she already knew it was ready. Henry stood by the door with his hands in his pockets, quiet for once. When they pulled up to Ben's house, Ben was already outside waiting. He walked down the ramp he had set up and waved. "There's my guy," Ben said. "We'll type before Todd even stopped the van." "You sure?" Ben leaned into the van doorway. "Will, if I wasn't sure I wouldn't have said yes," Ben said. "Now come on, I got movies, snacks I know you can have, and I moved the good chair out of your way." Todd unloaded Will's power chair and helped him down the ramp. Ben stood close, but he did not crowd him. Once Will was inside, Ben looked at Todd and Bate. "I got him," Ben said. Todd nodded, but he still looked worried. Will typed, "Go, I'm okay." Todd looked at the screen, then at Will. "You don't have to be okay," Todd said. "You just have to be here when we come back." Will nodded. Bate hugged him carefully. "We love you," she whispered. "Love you too." Henry stepped up last. He tapped Will's shoulder. "I'll text you if Dad cries ugly," Henry said. Todd turned around. "Henry." Will typed, "Please do." Bate let out a tiny laugh through her tears. For one small second, the air felt lighter. Then Todd, Bate, and Henry left for the funeral. Will sat in Ben's living room, hearing the van drive away. His chest tightened, but he was not in that church. He was not near Linda. He was not trapped in a room full of people pretending she had never done anything wrong. Ben sat on the couch beside him, not too close. "You want to talk about it?" Ben asked, "or you want a movie first?" Will looked at his tablet. His fingers moved slowly. "Movie first, talk maybe later." Ben nodded. "Movie first it is." He picked up the remote, turned on the TV, and said nothing else. Will looked down at his tablet and typed slowly. "Thank you, Ben." Ben smiled from the couch and nodded. "Anytime," Ben said. "Long drive over here, so you need a change." Will looked embarrassed for a second, but he still typed. "Yeah." Ben did not make a face, he did not sigh, he did not act like it was a problem. "Okay," Ben said calmly, "we'll take care of it." Will stared at him for a moment. "You really don't mind?" Ben shook his head. "No, Will, I worked in a group home, remember, and even if I didn't, you're family to me. I'm not going to make you feel bad for needing help." Will's eyes got wet. Linda always made it feel bad. Ben's face changed, but his voice stayed gentle. "Linda was wrong," he said. "Needing care doesn't make you bad, it doesn't make you less grown, it just means your body needs help." Will swallowed hard and looked away. Ben stood and grabbed Will's bag from beside the door. "Your dad packed everything," Ben said. "Of course he packed like you were staying for a week." Will typed, "Dad overpacks." Ben laughed. "Yeah, but today we are not making fun of him for it because he remembered everything." Will's mouth twitched like he wanted to smile. Ben helped him into the guest room where he had already cleared space beside the bed. He moved slowly and told Will what he was doing before he did it, just like Todd always did. "Okay, I'm going to lock your chair, then I'll help you transfer. You tell me if anything hurts." Will typed, "Okay." Ben helped him carefully, keeping the blanket over him as much as possible. He did the change quickly and respectfully, talking in a calm voice the whole time. "No rush," Ben said, "you're safe here." Will stared at the ceiling. "I hate needing this." Ben paused for a second. "I know," he said, "but having it doesn't mean you should be ashamed of it." Will blinked. "I don't feel like a man." Ben finished helping him get settled and pulled the blanket back over his legs. "Will, being a man isn't about what your body can or can't do," Ben said. "It's about who you are, and you are still Will, the same stubborn, sarcastic, movie-picking Will." Will looked at him. "Stubborn?" Ben smiled. "Very." Will typed, "Good." Ben helped him back into his power chair and made sure his tablet was in place. "There," Ben said, "clean, comfortable, and ready for movie day." Will let out a shaky breath. "Thank you for not making it weird." Ben looked at him seriously. "I'm never going to make care weird," he said. "You've had enough people make normal help feel like something ugly." Will's eyes filled again, but this time he did not look as scared. "I don't want today to be about Linda." Ben nodded. "Then today is not about Linda," he said. "Today is about you being here, safe, watching movies, and eating whatever your dad said you're allowed to eat." Will typed fast. He packed boring food. Ben opened the bag and looked inside. Very boring, he said, Todd-level boring. Will gave him a look. I hate him. Ben laughed. No, you don't. Will typed. A little today. Ben shook his head, still smiling. I'll see what I can do, maybe we can make the boring food less boring. They went back into the living room. Ben put Will's chair in the spot with the best view of the TV, plugged in his chair charger nearby, and handed him the remote. Your house rules today, Ben said. You pick the first movie. Will stared at the remote, then at his tablet. No sad movies. Ben sat down beside him. No sad movies. No funeral movies. Definitely no funeral movies. Will looked at the TV and typed one more thing. No grandmas. Ben nodded. No grandmas. Will finally picked a movie, and Ben started it without another word. At the funeral home, the room was quiet except for soft music playing in the background. People stood in small groups, speaking in low voices, hugging each other and looking toward the front of the room where Linda's casket was. Todd stood beside Bate and Henry, his hands in his pockets. He did not look comfortable, none of them did. Grandpa Rod walked over slowly. His face looked tired, like he had aged years in just a few days. Rod Jr. stood beside him, staying close in case his father needed him. Rod looked around the room, then looked at Todd. Todd, Rod asked softly. No, Will. Todd took a breath. He already knew the question was coming. No, Todd said. Will isn't coming. Rod lowered his head a little. Todd looked toward the casket, then back at his father. He said, dead or alive, I don't want to be in the same room as that woman after what she did to me. Rod closed his eyes. Todd's voice got heavier. And to be honest, Dad, if she wasn't my mom, I wouldn't be here either. Bate reached for Todd's hand and held it. Henry looked down at the floor, his jaw tight. Rod did not argue. He did not say Will should have come. He did not say Linda was still family. He did not say anything that would make Will sound wrong. Before Rod could speak, Rod Jr. shook his head. Will has a point, Dad, Rod Jr. said. Rod looked at him. Rod Jr. continued, everybody wants to act like death erases what someone did. It does. Linda hurt that boy, she hurt Todd, she hurt Bate, she hurt Henry, she hurt this whole family. The words sat heavy between them. Todd looked at his brother. Thank you, Todd said quietly. Rod Jr. nodded. I'm not saying this is easy, he said. She was still mom, I get that, but Will not being here is not disrespect, it's survival. Rod's eyes watered. I know, Rod whispered, I know. Todd looked at his father and saw the grief in him, not just grief for Linda dying, but grief for everything Linda had broken before she died. Rod rubbed his face. I failed that boy, Rod said. Todd shook his head. Dad, not today. No, Rod said, I did. I saw pieces of it before anyone else did, and I told myself Linda was just hard on him. I told myself she was scared. I told myself she didn't understand. His voice cracked. But she understood enough to hide it, that means she knew. Bates' eyes filled with tears. Henry looked up, angry and sad at the same time. Rod Jr. put a hand on his father's shoulder. Dad, today is not the day to fix everything, Rod Jr. said, but it is the day to stop lying about it. Todd looked back toward the casket. That's why Will isn't here, Todd said. Because we're done lying, we're done pretending Linda was just a difficult woman, she was abusive, and my son does not have to sit in this room and listen to people call her a saint. Rod nodded slowly. No, he said, he doesn't. Across the room, a few relatives looked over at them, whispering. Todd saw them, but he did not care. For years, the family had protected Linda's image. Not anymore. Henry stepped closer to Todd. Dad, Henry whispered, can we leave after this? Todd looked down at him. Yeah, Todd said, we'll stay long enough for Grandpa, then we're going to get your brother. Henry nodded. Good. Bates squeezed Todd's hand. Rod looked at all of them and swallowed hard. Where is Will now? He asked. With Ben, Todd said, he's safe. Rod let out a shaky breath. Good, he said, that's where he should be. Rod Jr. looked toward the front of the room, then back at Todd. You made the right call, he said. Will didn't need to be here. Todd's eyes got wet, but he nodded. For once, Todd said, I'm choosing my son's peace over everyone else's comfort. Bate leaned into him. And we're not going back from that, she said. At Ben's house, Will sat in front of the TV with a blanket over his legs. The movie was playing, but he was barely watching it. Ben noticed. "You okay?" Ben asked. Will looked at his tablet and typed. "Do you think they mad I not there?" Ben shook his head. "No," he said, "and if anyone is mad, that's their problem." Will stared at the screen. "She dead, I should feel something." Ben sat forward. "You do feel something," Ben said. "You feel scared, angry, guilty, confused, that counts." Will blinked a few times. "I don't feel sad for her." Ben nodded. "That's okay." Will looked at him. "Is it?" "Yes," Ben said, "you don't owe sadness to someone who made you afraid." Will's hand rested on his tablet for a moment. Then he typed, "I feel sad for Dad." Ben's face softened. "That makes sense," he said. "Your dad lost his mom, but he also lost the idea of who he wanted her to be. That's a hard kind of grief." Will's eyes filled. "I hate her for making him pick." Ben nodded. "Yeah," he said, "but Will, your dad picked you because he loves you, not because you made him." Will looked down. "I still feel like I broke the family." Ben shook his head right away. "No, Linda broke the family, you just survived it." Will stared at those words like he needed them to sink in. Then his tablet spoke again. "Can we pause the movie?" Ben grabbed the remote and paused it. "You need something." Will's lip trembled. "Can you just sit with me?" Ben moved closer but not too close. "Yeah," he said softly, "I can do that." Back at the funeral home, Todd stood beside Linda's casket for a moment. He looked down at her face and felt nothing simple. There was grief. There was anger. There was guilt. There was relief. He hated that relief most of all. Bates stood behind him with Henry, giving him space. Todd whispered low enough that only he could hear himself. "You were my mom," he said, "but you hurt my son and I will never understand why." His throat tightened. "I hope you find whatever peace you never let this family have." Then he turned away. He did not touch the casket. He did not say goodbye the way people expected him to. He walked back to Bate and Henry. Rod watched him from across the room. Rod Jr. stood beside him. Todd looked at his family and said, "Let's go get Will." Henry looked relieved. Bate nodded. As they walked toward the door, a relative called after them. "You're leaving already." Todd stopped, but he did not turn around right away. Bate whispered, "Todd." Todd turned. "Yes," he said, "we are." The relative frowned. "But the service hasn't started." Todd looked at the room, then at the casket, then back at the relative. "My son isn't here because Linda abused him," Todd said. "So no, we're not staying to pretend this is something it is." The room went silent. Henry stared at his father. Bates' eyes filled with pride and pain. Rod Jr. gave a small nod. Todd did not wait for anyone to answer. He turned back around, put one hand on Henry's shoulder, held Bates' hand with the other, and walked out. Outside, the air felt cold, but Todd could finally breathe. Henry looked up at him. "Dad." Todd wiped his eyes. "Yes." Henry's voice was quiet. "I'm proud of you." Todd stopped walking for a second. Then he pulled Henry into a hug. Bate wrapped her arms around both of them. For a moment, they stood there in the parking lot, holding each other while the funeral continued inside without them. Then Todd took a shaky breath. "Come on," he said, "let's go bring your brother home." At Ben's house, Will heard the van pull into the driveway later that afternoon. His whole body tensed. Ben stood and looked out the window. "They're here," Ben said. Will quickly typed, "Are they okay?" Ben looked back at him. "They look tired," he said, "but they're okay." The door opened and Henry came in first. He walked straight to Will and hugged him carefully. Will froze for a second, then relaxed. "You okay?" Will typed. Henry nodded against him. "Dad told the truth," Henry said. Will looked past him at Todd. Todd stood in the doorway, eyes red, face exhausted. Will typed slowly. "You told them." Todd nodded. "I told them you weren't there because Linda hurt you." Will's mouth shook. "Were they mad?" Todd walked over and crouched in front of him. "Some were," Todd said, "but I don't care." Will stared at him. Todd placed a hand on Will's arm. "I chose you," Todd said, "and I'm going to keep choosing you." Will broke. He started sobbing hard, his shoulders shaking as Bate came in and wrapped her arms around him. "We'll type through tears. I'm sorry." Todd shook his head. "No more sorry," he said, "not for this. We'll cry harder." Bate kissed the side of his head. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. Henry wiped his own face. "Linda doesn't get the last word," Henry said. Will looked at him through tears. "Then who does?" Todd smiled sadly. "You do, son." Will looked down at his tablet, his fingers shook as he typed. "Then my last word is I'm free." No one spoke for a moment. Then Todd leaned forward and hugged him. Bate held him. Henry stayed close. Ben stood quietly by the doorway, giving the family their moment. Linda's funeral had ended without Will. But for Will, something else had ended too. The fear that he had to explain. The guilt that he had to carry. The lie that family meant silence. For the first time in a long time, Will was not in the same room as Linda. And this time, he never had to be again. That night the house was quiet. Will was already in bed, his tablet resting beside him on the pillow. Bate had checked his window twice because Will asked, and Henry had done his stretches without making one joke. Todd sat in the living room, staring at nothing. The funeral was over. Linda was buried. But somehow, Todd still felt like she was standing in the middle of the room, trying to control everyone even after death. Then his phone rang. Todd looked down and saw his father's name. "Dad." Bate looked over from the couch. "You don't have to answer," she said softly. Todd took a breath. "I know," he said. But he answered anyway. "Hello." Rod's voice came through tired and sharp at the same time. "Todd, why did you go?" Todd closed his eyes. "Dad, I'm not doing this tonight." "No," Rod said. "I need to understand. You left your mother's funeral before the service even started." Todd stood up and walked toward the kitchen, lowering his voice so Will would not hear. "She called him a devil baby in court, Dad," Todd said. "In court." There was silence on the other end. Todd's hand tightened around the phone. "She sat in front of a judge, lawyers, me, Bate, Henry, and Will and called my disabled son a devil baby. After everything she did to him, after everything she put him through." Rod breathed heavily. "She was your mother, Todd." Todd's eyes filled instantly, but his voice got stronger. "Will is my son, Dad." Bate looked toward the kitchen, her face full of pain and pride. Todd kept going. "And I am done picking the comfort of adults over the safety of my kid. I should have done that years ago. I should have seen it sooner. I should have stopped her sooner. But I didn't, so don't ask me why I left. Ask yourself why any of us stayed as long as we did." Rod's voice cracked. "You think I don't know that?" "I don't know what you know," Todd said. "I know what Will knows. I know he shakes when Linda's name is said. I know he can't sleep without asking if his window is locked. I know he thinks he has to apologize because he didn't go to the funeral of the woman who abused him." Rod was quiet. Todd wiped his face. "And I know today my son typed that he was free because he didn't have to be in the same room as her. That matters more to me than what anyone at that funeral thinks." Rod let out a shaky breath. "I lost my wife today." Todd softened, but only a little. "I know, Dad, and I'm sorry for that, I really am." Rod sniffed. "She was my wife for a long time." "I know. She was the mother of my children." "I know," Todd said again. Rod's voice dropped. "But she hurt Will." Todd leaned against the counter. "Yes," he whispered, "she did." Rod started crying quietly. "I don't know how to grieve her and hate what she did at the same time." Todd closed his eyes. "Me neither, Dad." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rod said, "When you walked out, people started talking." Todd let out a bitter laugh. "Good. Todd." "No, Dad, goods, let them talk, let them know, let them be uncomfortable." Will had to be uncomfortable his whole life because Linda wanted everyone comfortable around her. Rod did not answer. Todd looked toward the hallway, where Will's bedroom door was cracked open. "I'm not hiding it anymore," Todd said. "Not from family, not from friends, not from anyone. Linda hurt my son, that's the truth, and if people can't handle the truth, they can stay away from us." Rod swallowed hard. "I don't want to lose you too." Todd's face changed. "You won't lose me because I told the truth," he said. but you will lose me if you ask me to protect Linda's name over Will's healing. Rod's crying got heavier. I don't want that. Then don't do it, Todd said. Beth walked into the kitchen and gently placed her hand on Todd's back. Todd looked at her and she nodded for him to keep going. Rod whispered, "Can I see Will tomorrow?" Todd hesitated. "That's up to Will." "I know," Rod said quickly. "I know, I'll ask, I won't just show up." Todd let out a slow breath. "Good." And Todd. "Yes." Rod's voice broke. "I'm sorry I said she was your mother like that fixed anything." Todd stared at the floor. "It doesn't fix anything," he said, "but thank you." Rod sniffed again. "I loved her." "I know you did. And I hate what she did." Todd wiped his eyes. "I know." Rod took a shaky breath. "Tell Will no, don't tell him anything, I'll say it myself if he lets me." Todd nodded even though Rod could not see him. "That's better." After the call ended, Todd stood in the kitchen with the phone still in his hand. Beth wrapped her arms around him from behind. "You okay?" she asked. Todd shook his head. "No." Beth held him tighter. Todd whispered, "I hate that part of me still feels like a bad son." Beth rested her head against his back. "You were a good father today." Todd broke then. He covered his face with one hand and cried quietly, trying not to wake Will or Henry. But down the hall, Will was already awake. He had heard enough. Not everything, but enough. His tablet lit up in the dark. A few minutes later, Todd's phone buzzed. It was a message from Will's tablet. "Dad." Todd wiped his face fast and walked down the hall with Beth beside him. He pushed Will's door open gently. "Hey son," Todd said, "you okay?" Will looked tired, his eyes wet. He typed slowly. "I heard some." Todd sighed and sat beside his bed. "I'm sorry, I tried to keep my voice down." Will blinked. "You said I'm your son." Todd's face crumpled a little. "Because you are." Will stared at him. "Even when it's hard." Todd leaned closer. "Especially when it's hard." Will's mouth trembled. "I don't want you to lose your dad because of me." Todd shook his head right away. "No, listen to me, you did not cause this, Linda caused this, the adults who stayed quiet caused this, you surviving it did not cause this." Will looked down. "Grandpa mad." Todd answered honestly. "He's hurt, he's confused, but he knows you were right not to go." Will breathed out slowly. "He asked to see me." Todd nodded. "Tomorrow, but only if you want." Will stared at the ceiling for a long time. Beth sat on the other side of the bed and brushed his hair back. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said. Will typed. "Not tomorrow." Todd nodded. "Okay. Maybe after." "That's okay too." Will's fingers moved again. "Dad, are you sad she dead?" Todd froze. Beth looked at him waiting. Todd took a long breath. "Yes," he said, "I'm sad she died, I'm angry at what she did, I'm relieved she can't hurt you anymore, I feel all of it at once." Will's eyes filled. "That sounds heavy." Todd gave a sad smile. "It is." Will looked at him for a long second. Then he typed. "You can be sad, I won't be mad." Todd's tears fell again. Beth covered her mouth. Will kept typing. "Just don't make me be sad too." Todd reached for Will's hand. "I won't," he whispered, "I promise." Will squeezed his father's fingers as much as he could. "Good." Todd leaned forward and kissed Will's forehead. "I love you, son." Will closed his eyes. "Love you too, Dad." Beth pulled the blanket up around Will. Henry appeared in the doorway, half asleep and holding his own pillow. "Is everyone crying again?" Henry mumbled. Will opened one eye and typed. "Go bed." Henry walked in anyway. "No." Todd wiped his face and gave him a look. "Henry." Henry climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed, making sure not to bump Will's legs. "I said no," Henry said. "Family cry party, I'm here." Will looked at him. "You weird." Henry nodded. "Yep." Beth laughed through her tears. Todd looked at all three of them, and for the first time that night, the house did not feel haunted by Linda. It felt full. Broken, tired, and hurting. But full. Will typed one more thing before his eyes closed. "Dad." Todd leaned in. Yes. Will is your son. Todd smiled through tears. Yes, he said, Will is my son. Will's eyes closed fully. Henry whispered, and my brother. Bate kissed Will's hand. And my baby. Will's tablet lit up one last time. Not baby. Henry smirked. There he is. Todd laughed softly, wiping his face. Linda was gone. The grief was not simple. The damage was not erased. But in that room, no one defended her anymore. No one asked Will to forgive. No one asked Todd to choose his mother over his son. And for that night, that was enough. Later that same night, Will was lying in bed with the blanket pulled up over his legs, his tablet beside him. The house had finally settled down after the long, painful day. Bate had gone to check the laundry, Henry was half asleep in his room, and Todd was sitting beside Will, making sure he was calm before lights out. Will shifted a little and froze. His face changed. Todd noticed right away. Will, Todd asked, you okay? Will's hand shook as he reached for his tablet. He typed fast, angry, and embarrassed. I need a quick change, another accident, WTF. Todd stood up calmly. Okay, he said, no big deal, I got you. Will squeezed his eyes shut, his breathing getting faster. I hate this, I am 29 and still doing this. Todd pulled the changing supplies from the drawer and kept his voice gentle. Will, look at me. Will did not. Todd moved closer. Son, that is Linda talking in your head, Todd said, just relax. Will opened his eyes, tears already there. Todd sat on the edge of the bed. She made you feel like needing care was something dirty or wrong, Todd said. It's not, your body had an accident, that's all, we clean you up, we get you comfortable and we move on. Will swallowed hard and typed. It feels like her voice. Todd nodded. I know, he said, but her voice doesn't get to live here anymore. Will stared at him. Bate came quietly into the room and stopped when she saw Will's face. What happened, she asked softly. Todd answered before Will could panic more. He needs a change, he's upset about it. Bate walked to the other side of the bed and brushed Will's hair back. Oh honey, she said, that's okay. Will typed with sharp, angry taps. Stop saying okay, it not okay. Bate nodded. You're right, it doesn't feel okay, but you are okay, there's a difference. Todd pulled on gloves and looked at Will. I'm going to help you now, same as always, nothing weird, nothing bad. Will took a shaky breath. I'm sorry. Todd shook his head. No sorry for care. Will looked at him, tears sliding down his face. Todd said it again firmer. No sorry for care. Bate squeezed Will's hand. That's a house rule now, she said, no apologizing for needing help. Will blinked. Henry will make fun of house rule. From the hallway, Henry's sleepy voice mumbled, no, I won't. Everyone looked toward the door. Henry stood there holding his pillow, hair messy, eyes half closed. Todd sighed. Henry, go back to bed. Henry shook his head. I heard Will upset. Will typed. I need change, go away. Henry immediately stepped back. Okay, he said, I'll be outside the door, not listening, just here. Will stared at him. That weird. Henry shrugged. Family cry party still going. Bate almost laughed, but she held it in. Todd pointed down the hall. Outside the door, buddy. Henry nodded and disappeared from the room. Todd turned back to Will. You ready? Will shut his eyes and nodded. Todd helped him carefully, keeping him covered as much as possible. Bate stayed near his head, holding his hand and talking softly so Will had something else to focus on. You're safe, Bate whispered. You're home, Dad's helping, I'm right here. Will cried quietly. Todd worked calmly and quickly, never rushing him, never making him feel like a burden. When it was done, Todd pulled the clean blanket back over Will's legs and adjusted his pillow. There, Todd said, clean and comfortable. Will stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then he typed. I heard Linda say devil baby in my head. Bate's face crumpled. Todd's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm for Will. She was wrong, Todd said. Will's fingers trembled. What if part of me believes her? Todd leaned closer. Then we keep telling that part the truth until it believes us instead. Will looked at him. Todd placed a hand over his heart. The truth is, you are my son, you are not a devil baby, you are not bad, you are not dirty, you are not too much. you are a man with a body that needs help and you are loved. Will cried harder. Bate wiped his face gently. You hear me? Todd asked. Will nodded but then typed. Say it again. Todd did not hesitate. You are my son, you are not bad, you are loved. Will closed his eyes. Again. Todd's voice broke but he said it again. You are my son, you are not bad, you are loved. Bate leaned down and kissed Will's forehead. And nothing Linda said can change that. From the hallway Henry called softly, and you're my brother. Will opened his eyes and typed. I said go away. Henry answered, I am away, I'm just emotionally nearby. Will stared at the doorway. Todd let out a small laugh. Bate smiled through tears. Will's mouth twitched. He dumb. Todd nodded. Yeah, he said, but he loves you. Will typed slower now. I love dumb Henry too. Henry sniffed from the hall. I heard that. Will typed. Good. Bate looked at Todd. Todd looked back at her, both of them tired, both of them hurting, but both of them relieved that Will was talking instead of shutting down. Todd sat beside Will again. Do you want me to stay until you fall asleep? Will nodded. Window locked. Bate answered softly. Locked. Door. Todd nodded. Closed, I'll leave it cracked if you want. Will typed. Cracked. Todd adjusted the door, then came back to the bed. Will's eyes were heavy, but he typed one more thing. Dad. Yeah, son. Linda voice loud tonight. Todd reached for his hand. Then my voice will be louder. Will blinked at him. Todd leaned closer and said quietly, you are my son, you are safe, you are loved. Will's breathing slowed. Bate sat beside him. Henry stayed in the hallway with his pillow, quiet for once. And little by little, Linda's voice got smaller. Not gone. Not yet. But smaller. Because in that room, Will was surrounded by voices that told the truth. The next day, Todd walked down the hallway, rubbing his eyes and trying to wake himself up before getting Will out of bed. He stopped at Will's bedroom door and knocked softly. Will, Todd called, you awake, son? No answer. Todd frowned and pushed the door open. The bed was empty. For 1 second his heart jumped. Will. Then he heard Henry's voice from the living room. We're in the living room, Dad. Todd turned and hurried down the hall. When he reached the living room, he stopped in the doorway. Will was already on the therapy mat, lying on his back with a pillow under his knees. His power chair was parked nearby, and his AAC tablet was set on the floor within reach. Henry sat beside him with a notebook, but the clipboard was nowhere in sight. Todd stared at them. Henry looked up like this was completely normal. Living room PT day, Henry said. Todd blinked. PT day. Will reached for his tablet and typed. Henry and I needed to distract ourselves from this crazy week that we had. Todd's face softened. Will typed again. So I let him do PT, do not ruin it. Henry pointed at the tablet. Yeah, Dad, don't ruin it. Todd held up both hands. I'm not ruining anything, he said. I'm just surprised you two are up before me. Henry shrugged. I heard him moving, he couldn't sleep, I couldn't sleep, so we made a deal. Todd looked at Will. What deal? Will typed. He helps me stretch, I do not yell unless he gets annoying. Henry nodded. And I agreed to only be 30% annoying. Will looked at him. You already at 80s. Henry smiled. Warm up numbers. Todd almost laughed, but he could see something else under the joking. Both of his sons looked tired. Their eyes were still heavy from everything Linda had stirred up. This was not just PT. This was them trying to breathe. Todd walked into the room and sat on the couch. Okay, Todd said gently, show me what you two are doing. Henry sat up straighter. Right now we're doing leg stretches, nothing crazy. I already asked if anything hurt. Will typed. He asked 5 times. Henry said because Josh said pain is not the goal. Todd nodded. Josh would be proud. Henry tried not to smile, but he failed. Will typed. Do not make his head big. Todd smiled. Too late. Henry carefully adjusted Will's leg, moving slowly and watching his face. Tell me if it pulls too much, Henry said. Will watched him for a moment, then typed. It okay. Henry nodded and held the stretch. For a few seconds the room was quiet. Not funeral quiet. Not fear quiet. Just quiet. Todd leaned back and watched them. Yesterday, the whole family had been drowning in grief, anger, and old wounds. Today, Henry was counting softly under his breath, and Will was letting his little brother help him without fighting every second. That felt like a miracle. Bate came in from the kitchen holding a cup of coffee. She froze when she saw Will on the mat. "Oh," she said, "good morning." Will typed, "Before you ask, yes, I am safe." Henry added, "And yes, I helped with the transfer right, Dad showed me." Todd raised an eyebrow. "I still want to check next time." Henry nodded. "That's fair." Bate walked closer and looked down at Will. "How are you feeling?" Will stared at the ceiling for a second. Then he typed, "Tired, mad, sad, but not stuck." Bate's eyes softened. "That's a good answer." Will typed, "Don't cry." Bate took one breath and nodded. "I'll try." Henry switched sides and helped Will with the other leg. "Okay, other side," Henry said. "Same thing, you tell me if it hurts." Will looked at Todd. "He sounds like Josh." Todd smiled. "He's learning." Henry kept his eyes on the stretch, but his face turned proud. Will noticed. Dad now his head big. Todd laughed quietly. "Sorry." Henry rolled his eyes. "I am right here." Will typed, "Sadly." Henry smirked. "Keep talking and I'll add 5 more seconds." Will looked offended. "Abuse." Henry immediately stopped joking and looked at him. "Not funny." Will looked at him then typed slower. "It okay, different when you joke." Henry nodded carefully. "Okay, but if it ever isn't, tell me." Will blinked. "I will." Todd and Bate exchanged a look. That was new. Henry was learning boundaries. Will was learning he could have them. After the stretches, Henry helped Will roll slightly to one side with Todd nearby just in case. He adjusted the pillow, checked Will's hips, and made sure the tablet was still where Will could reach it. "Next is arms," Henry said. Will typed, "Bossy." Henry said, "Professional." Will typed, "You are 12. Future professional." Todd shook his head. Bates sat on the couch beside him. For the first time in days, the living room did not feel like a place where everyone was waiting for bad news. It felt like a home again. Henry gently stretched Will's arm. 1, Henry counted, 2, 3. Will watched him closely. Then he typed, "Henry." Henry stopped. "What?" "Thank you." Henry's face changed. He looked down fast, pretending to check Will's elbow. "You're welcome." Will typed again. "I needed this." Henry swallowed hard. "Me too." Todd looked away for a second, his eyes filling. Bates squeezed his hand. Will noticed anyway. "Dad crying." Henry looked over. "Yep." Todd wiped his face. "I am not." Will typed, "Liar." Bates smiled. "He is." Todd sighed. "I'm allowed to cry in my own living room." Will typed, "Fine but quietly, PT in session." Henry pointed at Will. "Exactly, this is a professional facility now." Todd looked around the room. "Oh, is it?" Henry nodded seriously. "Yes, welcome to Henry Physical Therapy, we accept payment in snacks." Will typed, "He accepts my snacks without asking." Henry said, "That's called insurance." Bate laughed before she could stop herself. Todd laughed too. Will stared at them, then his mouth twitched into a small smile. Henry saw it and smiled back. "There he is," Henry said softly. Will looked at his tablet. "A little." Todd leaned forward. "A little is good." Henry finished the stretch and sat back. "Okay," he said, "break time." Will typed, "Already." Henry shrugged. "You had a hard week, I'm not trying to break you." Will stared at him. That was mature. Henry grinned. "I know, weird, right?" Will typed, "Very." Bates stood and grabbed Will's water bottle. "Do you want some before you get back in your chair?" Will nodded. Todd helped hold the bottle while Will took a few careful drinks. Afterward, Will looked at Todd and typed, "Dad, I don't want Linda to take today too." Todd's face grew serious. "She doesn't get today," Todd said. Will looked at Henry. Henry nodded. Today is PT day, Henry said, not Linda day. Will typed. And movie day. Henry nodded again. And movie day. Bate added and maybe nap day. Will typed. Mom always ruins fun. Bate smiled. Mom keeps people alive. Todd nodded. She does. Will looked around at them, then back at his tablet. I still hear her voice. The room got quiet but no one panicked. Todd moved from the couch to the floor beside the mat. I know, he said. Will typed. But this morning Henry's voice was louder. Henry looked down, blinking fast. Todd placed a hand gently on Will's shoulder. That's how we beat it, Todd said, one louder good voice at a time. Will stared at him for a long second. Then he typed. Then tomorrow maybe mom voice. Bates' eyes filled. I can do that, she whispered. Will looked at Todd. And dad voice. Todd nodded. Always. Will looked at Henry. And dumb Henry voice. Henry wiped his face with his sleeve. Best voice in the house. Will typed. Do not push it. Henry laughed quietly. Todd helped Will sit up slowly, supporting him while Henry moved the pillow and Bate brought the chair closer. They took their time, working together, listening when Will needed a pause. When Will was finally back in his power chair, Henry fixed the blanket over his legs like he had seen Todd do 100 times. Will looked down at it, then at Henry. Not bad. Henry smiled. Thanks. Will typed. Still crooked. Henry groaned. Man. Todd leaned against the wall, watching them. Yesterday, Todd had walked out of his mother's funeral. Last night, he had argued with his father. And this morning, his sons were on the living room floor, choosing movement over fear. It did not erase the pain. It did not fix everything. But it was something. Henry picked up the remote and handed it to Will. Your pick, Henry said. Will typed. No sad movies. Henry nodded. No sad movies. Bates sat beside Todd. Todd looked at Will and said softly, proud of you, son. Will did not look away this time. He typed. Proud of us. Todd's eyes filled again, but he smiled. Yeah, he said, proud of us. Henry plopped down on the floor beside Will's chair. So, Henry asked, same time next PT day. Will looked at him. Do not get greedy. Henry grinned. Every other weekend. Will thought about it. Then he typed. Deal but no clipboard. Henry held up his hands. No clipboard. Will looked at the notebook. And no notebook. Henry slowly moved the notebook behind his back. What notebook? Will stared at him. Todd laughed. Bate laughed. And this time Will did too. It was small and tired, but it was real. Linda's voice was still somewhere in the back of his mind. But in the living room, surrounded by his family, it was getting harder to hear her.